I'm often asked, what do I mean by the secret Salesforce and how do you develop one? Well, to illustrate this, this is Claire. Claire, as you can see, looks rather fashionable in a retro sort of style, which is very in keeping with the brand because she runs a retro events business and she's into retro music and clothing. Now, Claire is what I consider to be someone who is customer focused. Last April, I was due to go away on one of her retro events, weekend events, down in Sandbanks near Weston-super-Mare. At the very beginning of March, or the end of February, beginning of March, she saw the writing on the wall, what was happening with the pandemic. And long before the government announcements, she contacted everybody and offered a full refund. Or she gave a choice of putting it forward to the following year. But later she decided it wasn't worth it because there was so much uncertainty. She gave a full refund without any problems. But it didn't stop there. Claire went on the weekend of the event. She managed to put on a whole weekend of Facebook Live. She had the bands playing. She had DJs playing throughout the weekend. She was DJing. She put on solo dance lessons for those who wanted it. She had couples doing dance lessons as a couple from their living rooms for others who were in couples. She actually put on a fashion show for the ladies. She arranged all these things. And all throughout the weekend, she'd be there engaging, communicating on Facebook with her customers. Now, not only that, Claire went on after that weekend for the next few months, every Saturday afternoon without fail. She was there for an hour to 2 hours from her living room in her retro clothes with retro ornaments, playing music to her customers, taking requests, communicating with people who came on, noticing who came on and welcoming them in. As she looked at who joined at the live, she'd say things like, welcome Steve, welcome so-and-so, any request. She was engaging and she was engaged. So if I were to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is internally focused on your organization and 10 is focusing on the customer, where would you put Claire? Me, I'd put her a 10. But if I were to ask you that same question about your own business, where 1 is internally focused on your business and 10 is you are customer focused, if you were to mark that from your customer's perspective, I wonder where you'd be. Now, I use Claire as an example because you see, dance has been a large part of my life for the last 30 odd years. And dance has got, I directly relate to communication in business, communication in relationships and life. Dance is so relevant. And there are 2 aspects to dance. We have the music, the rhythm, the pace, and we have the connection, the feel, and the visuals. So let's go on to the music, the rhythm. Music, dance, certainly with 6-bar blues and 32-beat swing, because I do a lot of rock and roll or swing dancing. And they have a rhythm. They have 4 beats to a bar and 2 bars make a count of 8. And it's the count of 8 that builds up. So it goes like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And if we're not in tune to the beat, if we're out of rhythm, our partners can't follow us. As the lead, I need to be in rhythm and I need to communicate very clearly what to expect, what the dance partner has to do, keeping in rhythm. Because if I'm out of rhythm, then she has a hard time following. So I'm listening to the pace, the hesitations, the playfulness. I listen to the beat. I listen to the rise and fall. And I do the same when I'm with the customer. You see, I need to be listening to what they're saying, to what they're not saying, to those hesitations, the change of pace, the increase in volume. And if I'm not making myself clear, if I'm not leading well, then the customer cannot follow what is wanted. Now, the other aspect is the connection. If you look at that photo, you will see the lady is leaning back because she's playing. She's playing the rhythm. And as a lead, I have to sense that in the connection and let her play. But if you look at that, you'll notice that she's leaning back. The lead there, is holding. He's anchored to let her have that strength so she can rely on him. Because if he didn't do that and he let go, she would just fall over backwards. And that isn't exactly dance etiquette. Well, it's the same with our customers. We need to be feeling that connection. You see, when we're with the customers, we have 5 senses. And it's the same when we're in dancing as well. We have the visual, the auditory to listen. We have the kinesthetic for the touch. And we also have the sense of olfactory and gustatory, the sense of smell and the sense of taste. Now, I hope you're not going around licking or sniffing customers or dance partners. But we are now using those senses with our customers. So we're looking at the connection. So we could have a good firm handshake. We might think about the connection on, are we sitting up or leaning forward? Are we laid back? Is the customer laid back? So we're looking at how they are. We're looking at the facial expressions. We're looking at the body language. Are they moving around? Are they fidgeting? Are they showing an interest? You see, our job is to make sure that we are leading. We have to let them know, just like the lady is trusting the man when she's dancing and leaning back like that. We should let the customers know they can trust us to deliver what we say, to do what we say. As a speaker, it's important to let the customer know the stage is safe in our hands, and their stage is safe in our hands. So we're looking to put all of these across hands. That's how I relate dance to business. This is John. John, as you can see, works for Travelodge in Brighton. Now, you may not associate Travelodge with a wonderful experience, but let me tell you that John made the experience for me when I turned up. I was working in Travelodge in Brighton, and I went to I was working in Brighton, and I went to Travelodge at the end of the day. I parked the car, I pulled my luggage up. The car park was gravelly and slightly uphill, so I was sweating a bit when I got to the door. He saw that. He opened the door, came out, helped me with the luggage. He welcomed me enthusiastically. He welcomed me by my name. Now, he'd taken the trouble to look to see who his guests were for the day. He then went on to welcome me back. I had never been to Travelodge Brighton before, but I had been to other Travelodges. He had taken the trouble to get some history. He told me about places to go if I wanted a good meal. He said where the pubs were, where the restaurants were, what was in walking distance, what was in driving distance. He was so enthusiastic. He was so welcoming, and he was interested in me. See, he gave what I call the baker's dozen. That is, oh, by the way, for those of you too young to remember, when I was young, my mum used to send me up the baker's shop to get 12 rolls of bread, 12 rolls. A good baker would throw one more in for extra, the baker's dozen. John went over and above to make me feel welcome. Now, I talk about the secret Salesforce, and I say in any business, there's 3 characters or types of characters. There's the ambassador, the people who drive the business forward, who are enthusiastic and give the baker's dozen. People like John, people like Claire. Then you have the neutrals, the people in the middle who are just okay, they do just so much. And finally, you have the saboteurs, the people who detract, who are not really interested. In the customer experience, there's one measurement that is often used, and that's called Net Promoter Score, where they ask just one question. On a scale of 0 to 10, how likely are you to recommend us to other people? Now, 9 and 10s are advocates, and they give a positive score. 7 and 8s are neutrals and don't give anything. And the 0 to 6 are detractors, and they take away from the score. I actually tend to turn this round in a secret Salesforce one. When I reference ambassadors, neutrals, and saboteurs. And I split the neutrals into two groups. But first, at the bottom, I cast for saboteurs. These are the 1 and 2s. Now, these are the people who are just undermining the business. They're not interested. They could be sarcastic. They could be passive aggressive. They could certainly be undermining to the customers. And they're not enthusiastic. All they're interested in is a paycheck. These are the people that when they walk in the room, you can just feel the energy being sucked out. Do you know anyone like that? Because if you don't, it just could be you. The neutrals, as I say, I split into two groups. The lower half are the 2s, the 3, 4, and 5s. Now, these are the people who are partly engaged. They will do the job when they're being watched. They'll tend to do the job and nothing more. They're not really interested. It's just a paycheck, but they will do what they'll put effort into it up to a point. They tend to be task focused and lose track of the customer and being people focused. And they may be jobs worth, perhaps not going over and above, but saying, well, you have to ask my manager or something like that. The 6, 7, 8s. Now, these are engaged. You know, they are solid performers. They're good. They do the job. They're mostly task focused. They could be a little bit people focused. They could be a mix. And you might think, well, that's great. But we expect good. We pay for good. Good is the enemy of great. And we don't remember good 2 years later, 3 years later, when contracts come up for renewal or new products or services are wanted. We only remember the exception. So the 9 and 10s are the exception. They are the ambassadors. They drive the business forward. They act as if they own the business. They're enthusiastic. They're engaged in everything they do. They light up the room when they walk in, and they light up your experiences. You see, we only remember two types, these experiences that create an emotion. The emotion that is a positive, pivotal moment of truth, or a negative, detracting one. You see, every interaction is a moment of truth. And the pivotal moments of truth make up the customer experience. Those that are really exceptional and those that are exceptionally bad. These are the ones who remember, and these are what cause us to vote with our feet 2, 3 years later. Our aim is to develop more and more ambassadors. Our aim is to move those saboteurs at least up to being the 2s and 3s, the 3 to 5s. You see, the 3 to 5s could also be unknowing saboteurs on occasion. Our aim is to move those 3 to 5s at least up to the 6 to 8s. And our aim is to move the 6 to 8s up to become the 9 and 10s, and to recognize, reward, and develop our ambassadors. So let me give you some tips on how to do this. As a manager, I'm going to give you a couple of tips. First of all, just think about your direct reportees. And in a quiet space, just write down against their names where you'd grade them on a scale of 1 to 10. Now, don't think about this. Do it totally subconsciously, what comes out immediately. Then leave it alone for a day or so. Then come back and look at it and wonder why you scored each one of those reportees with those scores. What was it about their attitude, their characteristics, their behaviors, their skills, perhaps? What was it about those that made you give them that score? And what can you do to develop them and move them up? What development training, what incentives can you give them? The second thing I'd suggest to managers is seriously consider external employee engagement surveys. And they need to be external because employees do not trust internal surveys. They do not trust them to be anonymous because the surveys have to be anonymous. They need to be regular, at least twice, if not 3 or 4 times a year. And you may find what people say when they're not speaking directly to you is quite hurtful and shocking. But if you act on those and let people know that you are truly listening, you will move people up. and you will have a more engaged workforce. And when people are fully engaged, they become ambassadors. Now, the other thing is for team members, and it will include managers as individuals, is to look at how you actually develop yourself. Now, one of the things is active listening, and it's not just for listening. So here we got to listen, as we did with the example of a dance. We're listening to what people are saying, what they're not saying, the hesitations, the pace, the rising vocal, the falling vocal. We're listening to all of that, but we also need now to develop our empathy, our empathic phrases, and be aware of what are the red rags that cause people to get upset and break rapport, because we need to develop rapport, to be like them and listen to what they like. And we need to be assertive to demonstrate that, yes, they can trust us. We are able to deliver what's wanted, but we are not controlling. Just as the lady has to trust the lead, so the customer needs to trust you to deliver. So these are just some of the things that we can do. We'll look to see how we can be there, watching their expressions and responding, not reacting to these expressions and these change of tones and words. Let's move on to talk about some culture, the culture of the organization or your organization. Now, the late Cesar Ritz founded the Ritz Hotel in Paris and in London. And he focused the whole thing about excellence, customer focused, do whatever was right for the customer, as long as it was legal. He also brought in the top French chef, Augustin Escoffier, I believe it's called. Now, Escoffier actually was reported as not speaking English in the kitchens because he believed English cooking was so poor, but he wanted to maintain his French feel throughout. Either way, the whole thing about everything was about excellence, excellent service, excellence, customer focus. The Ritz went on to also to focus the Carlton hotels, which later became the Ritz-Carlton. And one of the mottos in the Ritz-Carlton is that we are ladies and gentlemen who serve ladies and gentlemen. Not we serve ladies and gentlemen, but we are ladies and gentlemen who serve ladies and gentlemen. And that emphasis and that emphasis that the staff are important, the staff, everybody is equal, is what helps. And all the staff are trained to deliver exceptional customer focused service. Everything about it. Another company that has an ethos on the customer is John Lewis. They have a guideline to follow directions, but be customer focused and empower their staff accordingly. Now, my late wife used to work next door in what was then British Home Stores. And she would often go into John Lewis, or as it was called then, Healers, one of the John Lewis partnerships. And she would go into Healers, and when she come out, she told me, Stevie, they always make me feel so special when I go there and buy things. The staff were trained so well, and I believe they still are, to be customer focused. Equally, whenever we were in town, if she wanted to use the toilets for ladies, she wouldn't go to British Home Stores. She'd go next door to John Lewis, because the toilets were always in excellent condition. And my late wife always judged the place by the toilets. Ladies, do you do the same? I don't think you judge very well if you went to the men's toilets. But another aspect of John Lewis, again, is the empowerment. It was Christmas a few years ago. My youngest son was a budding thespian. That means he was a waiter. And as a budding thespian, i.e. waiter, he didn't get much time off over Christmas. This Christmas was no exception. He came to me around midnight on Christmas Eve because he'd been working, and he had to go back for an early afternoon shift on the 7th, I think the 1 o'clock shift. Now, all he'd asked for from me for Christmas was a very exclusive, expensive dressing gown from John Lewis, which I bought him. On Christmas morning, we got up, had breakfast, had coffees, and then we opened the presents. And his dressing gown was a size too small. He was disappointed, as was I, because he was going back early, on the 27th to get back to work. So on the morning of the 27th, I had to get up early, scrape the ice of the car, drive to Reading and park up and walk up to John Lewis in Broad Street on the first day of the sales. It was packed, wall to wall people. Oh, this was pre-pandemic days when the shops were packed. I made my way through and I saw the sign. No refunds or exchanges until the new year. Dismayed but undeterred, I kept going and I saw an assistant on her own. Quickly, or as quick as I could through the crowds, I made my way to her. I explained what the problem was. She stopped, she looked at me and she listened. Then she smiled and said, "Wait here, I'll see what I can do." A few minutes later, she came down from the stockroom with the right size dressing gown. And I was elated until I looked at the queues at the other tills and thought, I'm not going to get home in time to see my son off. And they might even turn around and say, we can't change this until the new year. This assistant knew what I was thinking. She smiled. She took me to an unused till, opened it, dealt with the transaction, and wished me a happy new year. Now, was that lady in sales? Was she in service? Or was she in leadership? Because I believe she was in all three. She was in sales. She could deal with a transaction. She could open the till, take transactions. She was in service because she was serving me. She was focusing on me, the customer. She was customer focused. And she was in leadership because she totally ignored management guidelines. She felt empowered to make a decision off her own back to serve the customer correctly. And that is what I believe is an ambassador. You see, every transaction, every interaction is a moment of truth. And sales has always come, believe it or not, from a Scandinavian word meaning to serve. So really we should be serving when selling, and we should always take ownership and make decisions. My only regret is I didn't make a note of her name. So going back to Claire not only ran those next 6 months at home, a Saturday afternoon, putting on a live Facebook Live, playing retro music, interacting with her customers. After that, after a few months, she still continues to do so. She is always promoting the bands, saying the band is performing here. It's an online sort of program. You can pay to go there. You can buy their CDs or you can give a donation. She has been an ambassador for the bands because the bands, the musicians, artists have suffered dramatically through the pandemic. And she is now an ambassador for them while still serving her own customers, her own tribe, saying these events are on, go and have a look at this, do this. She is there supporting both suppliers and the customers. So you see, you don't have, now the whole point about this, we talked about a travel lodge, we talked about a hotel chain that's well known, but is only what's not the top end. We've talked about the Ritz and the Ritz-Carlton, who are top end hotels. We've talked about a very well-known high street retail brand, but Claire is just a one-woman band. It's just her. So and she may have occasional helpers, but it is just her. So you see, this is appropriate across the board, whether you're a one-man or one-woman band, a very small business, whether you're an intermediate business, whether in retail or in hotel, hospitality in whatever form, whether you're a big brand, and also if you're a single speaker, the same rules apply. You see, you don't have to be customer focused. You don't have to be an ambassador, and you don't have to have a secret Salesforce. But if you want to stay in business and thrive through the pandemic and way beyond, then you do need to be customer focused. You do need to be a brand ambassador. And you do need to develop your own version of your secret Salesforce. Thank you.